terms of issues, what I like to, I guess how I like to frame it is that I always look for opportunities to make the curriculum more engaged with multilingual content, multilingual processes of learning, and multilingual products of learning. And that could be the curriculum within EALD, but also across the curriculum, because there's no reason why we couldn't do multilingual content, processes, or products in science, maths, arts, and like so many amazing opportunities. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I would look at this book, for example, as a series of opportunities. And so we can look at the whole text, sure, but we can look at a part of the text. And, you know, one of my favourite pages that I just automatically go to is the ingredients page. Well, we have, because we have like multiple modes here, multiple languages, you know. So we have the visual, wonderful illustrations. We have Korean and English, and in the Korean we have Hangul and the transliteration. And these are tools that students, even, you know, whatever language they're familiar with, it may not be Korean, but they will be familiar with how different modes of language come in to communication. But when they see it in a book like this, it's validating. And this is an example of a published text that uses multiple modes of language to communicate very clearly. And then we can, you know, think about, well, what kind of text can our students create that use these methods? And what kind of audiences can our students be communicating with who can benefit from these sort of multimodal texts? And we know that it's not only going to be children who benefit from it, adults, adolescents, everyone can understand and learn from it. Well, what I love, you know, so this text is about you and your learning and the expertise that you've developed and the expertise that your family has been able to impart to you. And all of our students have their own knowledge and their funds of knowledge from the people around them. And so this is an example of, you know, saying, what is it that your family knows or your community knows that is interesting and worthwhile to share, maybe with your classmates, maybe with wider audience. One of the wonderful things about working with multilingual students, or any students, as a teacher, is that there's always something new to learn from them. And when I was teaching in high school, I knew that my students had lives and expertise that I wasn't privy to. And so I opened up a language research project, and I would ask my students to be linguists, to go and find language in their world and bring it back to the classroom and basically just tell us what's going on. So students could go home and find out about their family members learning English, if they were new to Australia, for example, or they could look on their phones and look at examples of how they were translanguaging in messages with their friends, or they could engage with, you know, the music or the films that they love and talk about how they access those, maybe using things like subtitles and all these kind of multilingual modes of learning and being and doing that these kids have. Now, we as teachers, we don't know everything that they're up to, but when they tell us this, and we can structure that as a research project with like a question, a method, findings and a discussion. I mean, like, I love this part, and I guess this comes from you being a researcher. You've included a methodology in the back of the, you know, at the end, and this methodology is not like we would see in a science experiment, not even necessarily what we would see in a procedure for cooking, for example, but it's about you, what did you do, who helped you, How was that experience, right? And what did you think about it? And these are real questions that we ask as researchers, but we don't need to make them difficult. They're accessible questions. And so I wrote some notes to myself. I thought, this is a really wonderful way to inspire students for a research project, because you can ask them, if you were going to do a research project, what research methods did Julie use in finding out about kimchi? And what could you do that suits a question or a problem or a topic that you're interested in? You can ask students, what are the resources you have access to? Who are the people? What are the places? What are the experiences or even texts that you can access that would help you learn and would be interesting to other people? So we don't have to think about research as, we're going to start with a text search on a search engine or anything like that. We start with thinking, what's around me? And that's a wonderful way to bring language and knowledge and experience from outside the classroom into the classroom. Because in my family, this is something we eat. And, Auntie says it's good for stamina. I want to know if that's true.
Right.
Yeah. So coming from experience is a really good place to start with research. And then, when we look here, we don't see a methodology that's like a survey and a literature review. We see a methodology where you're engaging with people and places and experience. And that requires students to reflect on their learning, which is more powerful than reading texts and reporting back. Sometimes I think in school we get a little bit stuck on single mode texts, so an oral presentation or a written report. But this is a really strong demonstration of how bringing multiple modes into text supports communication, and it can be a sophisticated way of communicating. It's not just kids writing stories with illustrations. It's really purposeful, really planned and considered ways of communicating to wider audience. Often, particularly maybe in senior secondary, the only multimodal text that students might engage in is like a slideshow and an oral presentation. But this is an example that multimodal can be something more, can be something else.
So the challenge is really about how to work that with the curriculum.
Yeah.
Schools have unit plans. People have made certain ways in which they're going to co-teach something. Yeah. So it makes it quite hard. Do you have any advice for teachers in relation to that?
Yeah, my advice is you don't need to start with a grand gesture, right? Some people want to, and that's wonderful. But a lot of teachers, they're pushed for time. We know there are a lot of pressures on teachers. So making a small change can make a big difference. And a small change can be sustainable. So it might be a matter of looking at, we've got a task where students have to give an oral presentation with a slideshow. And there are requirements in that task that it's multimodal. But that the teacher could think, well, how else can we imagine multimodal text and give students a choice?
Well, I think I've taken up enough of your time today. And thank you so much for your wonderful insights.
It's always a pleasure.
This has been so amazing.